What's supposed to be America's most celebrated holiday can quickly turn into your worst nightmare. The 4th of July brings families together, lights up the night sky, and fills neighborhoods with celebration. But sometimes, in the darkness between the fireworks, something sinister is watching. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 true horror stories that happened on Independence Day. Stories submitted by viewers like you, who experienced terror when they should have been experiencing joy. So turn down your lights, put on your headphones, and let's descend into these chilling tales. Story 1. The Watcher in the Crowd. Submitted by Sarah M. Sarah was 16 years old during the summer of 2019, living in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone. The annual 4th of July fireworks show was the biggest event of the year, held at the local high school football field. Sarah arrived with her friends around 8 p.m., spreading blankets on the grass near the back of the crowd. The atmosphere was perfect. Families everywhere, kids running around with sparklers, the smell of barbecue drifting through the warm evening air. About halfway through the fireworks display, Sarah noticed a man standing alone about 20 feet away. He wasn't watching the sky like everyone else. He was staring directly at her. When their eyes met, he didn't look away, he just smiled. Sarah felt uncomfortable but tried to ignore him, focusing on the colorful explosions overhead. But every time she glanced in his direction, he was still there, still staring, still smiling that unsettling smile. When the grand finale began, Sarah's friend Emma leaned over and whispered, "That guy has been taking pictures of you this entire time." Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked back and sure enough, the man was holding up a phone, clearly pointed in her direction, not at the fireworks, at her. "We need to leave, now," Sarah told her friends. As they packed up their blankets, Sarah kept checking over her shoulder. The man was following them, staying about the same distance away, weaving through the dispersing crowd. They reached Sarah's car in the school parking lot, and as they drove away, Sarah looked in her rearview mirror. The man was standing under a streetlight, writing something down. Later that night, Sarah received a friend request on Facebook from someone with no profile picture. The account had only been created that day. When she clicked on it, her heart stopped. The profile was filled with photos. Photos of her at the fireworks show. Close-ups of her face, taken with a zoom lens. Pictures of her car. Her license plate clearly visible. And dozens more photos of her from previous town events that she didn't even remember attending. At the bottom of the profile, in the About section, was a single line. "See you next year, Sarah." Sarah immediately blocked the account and reported it to police. But they said there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't technically threatened her. She never attended another public 4th of July event in her hometown. Story 2. What we found in the water. Submitted by Mike R. Mike and his college buddies had rented a lake house for 4th of July weekend in 2021. The property was beautiful, but isolated. The nearest neighbor was over a mile away through dense woods. On July 4th, they spent the day jet skiing, grilling, and setting up for their own private fireworks show that evening. As the sun set, they moved to the dock with their fireworks and beer, ready to celebrate. Around 10 p.m., Mike's friend Jake pointed out into the dark water. "Hey, is that someone swimming out there?" They all looked. In the moonlight, they could make out what appeared to be a person's head bobbing in the water, maybe 50 yards from shore. "Hello?" Mike called out. "Are you okay?" No response. The figure just continued to bob silently in the water. "Maybe they can't hear us over the fireworks from town," suggested their friend Chris. They decided to take the small rowboat out to check on the person. Mike and Jake rowed out while the others stayed on the dock with a flashlight. As they got closer, something felt wrong. The figure wasn't moving naturally. It wasn't treading water or swimming. It was just floating. When they were about 10 feet away, Jake shined his phone's flashlight directly at it. It wasn't a person. It was a mannequin, dressed in a wetsuit, with long dark hair glued to its head. But that wasn't the worst part. The mannequin's face had been painted to look like a rotting corpse. Black circles around the eyes, gray skin and a grotesque smile carved into the plastic. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. Then they heard the sound of another boat motor starting up somewhere in the darkness across the lake. Without saying a word, they rowed back to shore as fast as they could. Their friends helped pull the boat up onto the beach, and they all ran back to the house, locking every door and window. They spent the rest of the night taking shifts, watching the lake from the windows. Around 3 a.m., Mike saw a small boat with no lights slowly patrol back and forth in front of their dock. The next morning, the Mannequin was gone. When they packed up to leave, they found a note tucked under the windshield wiper of Mike's car. "Thanks for the show. Hope you enjoyed mine." None of them ever returned to that lake. Story 3. The House That Shouldn't Exist. Submitted by Jennifer L. Jennifer had just moved to a new subdivision outside Atlanta in June 2020. When July 4th came around, her neighbor invited her to a block party and BBQ in the cul-de-sac. She was excited to meet her new neighbors and feel part of the community. The party was in full swing by 6 p.m. Kids playing in yards, adults grilling and drinking, everyone in a festive mood. Around 8 p.m., as it was getting dark, Jennifer noticed something odd. At the end of the cul-de-sac was a house she'd never seen before. She'd walked this street dozens of times since moving in, but this house seemed new. It was a 2-story colonial, painted dark blue with all the windows covered by thick curtains. No decorations, no lights, no signs of life. It looked completely out of place compared to the well-maintained homes around it. "Hey, Carol," Jennifer said to her next-door neighbor, "who lives in that house at the end of the street?" Carol followed Jennifer's gaze and frowned. "What house?" "The blue one, right there." Jennifer pointed directly at it. Carol stared for a long moment, then looked at Jennifer with concern. "Honey, there's no house there. That's just the empty lot where the Petersons' house burned down 3 years ago." Jennifer looked again. The house was still there, clear as day. She could see it perfectly. "You can't see the blue house?" Jennifer asked. Several other neighbors overheard and came over. One by one, they all looked where Jennifer was pointing. None of them could see anything but an empty, overgrown lot. But Jennifer could see the house. And now, she could see something else. In one of the upstairs windows, a curtain moved slightly. Someone was watching the party from inside. I need to go home," Jennifer said, feeling dizzy. As she walked toward her house, she kept glancing back. The house was still there, and now she could see a figure standing on the front porch, perfectly still, watching her. When she reached her front door and looked back one final time, the figure on the porch raised its hand and waved. Jennifer spent the rest of the evening researching the property records online. The lot at the end of the cul-de-sac had been empty for 3 years, just like Carol said. The previous house had burned down in a fire that killed an entire family. But every day since that 4th of July, Jennifer can still see the house. And every evening she sees the figure on the porch watching her neighborhood. She's the only one who can see it. Story 4. Uncle Richard's Return. Submitted by David K. David's extended family held their annual 4th of July reunion at his grandmother's farm in rural Kentucky. It was a tradition that went back decades. Same place, same weekend, same relatives making the drive from all over the state. In 2018, David was 23 and hadn't been to the reunion in several years due to college. He was looking forward to reconnecting with family members he hadn't seen since he was a kid. The day was going perfectly. Great food, catching up with cousins, kids running around the property. As evening approached, everyone gathered on the front porch to watch fireworks from the nearby town light up the sky. David was talking to his cousin Amy when his grandmother approached them. "David, honey, I'm so glad Uncle Richard finally came. He's been asking about you all day." David was confused. "Uncle Richard? Grandma, I don't have an Uncle Richard." His grandmother looked puzzled. "Of course you do. Your father's older brother. He's right over there on the porch swing." She pointed to an elderly man sitting alone on the far end of the porch. David had never seen him before in his life. "Grandma, Dad doesn't have an older brother. He only has 2 sisters." His grandmother's expression grew concerned. "David, what are you talking about? Richard has been part of this family longer than you've been alive. Go say hello to him." David approached the man cautiously. Up close, he could see the family resemblance, the same nose and jawline as his father. The man looked up and smiled warmly. "David, look how you've grown. Last time I saw you, you were just a little boy." "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't think we've met," David said politely. The man's smile faded slightly. "Of course we have. I'm your Uncle Richard. I used to take you fishing at the pond behind the house when you were young." David had never been fishing at that pond. There was no pond behind his grandmother's house. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, David excused himself and found his father in the kitchen. "Dad, who is that man on the porch? Grandma says he's Uncle Richard, your older brother." His father's face went pale. "David, I don't have an older brother named Richard. I never have." They went back to the porch together, but the swing was empty. "Where did he go?" David asked his grandmother. She looked at the empty swing, confused. "Where did who go?" "Uncle Richard. He was just sitting right there." His grandmother stared at him with genuine concern. "David, honey, there's no Uncle Richard. There never has been." But for the rest of the evening, David continued to see him. Uncle Richard would appear in different places around the property, standing by the barn, sitting at the picnic table, walking through the fields. Every time David pointed him out to someone else, they couldn't see him. Before leaving that night, David went through old family photo albums with his grandmother. In several pictures from reunions over the years, he found the same man. Uncle Richard was in photos spanning decades, always in the background, always watching the family gatherings. But according to everyone else, he'd never existed. David never attended another family reunion, but every 4th of July he receives a postcard with no return address. On the front is always a picture of his grandmother's farm. On the back, in neat handwriting, "Missing you at the reunion. Hope to see you next year. Uncle Richard." 4 stories, 4 different ways that America's birthday turned into something far more sinister. Whether it's a stalker in the crowd, something lurking in dark water, a house that shouldn't exist, or a family member who never was, these stories remind us that horror doesn't take holidays. If you have your own 4th of July horror story or any scary experience you'd like to share, send it to me at the email in the description below. You might hear your story featured in a future video. And remember, the next time you're watching fireworks light up the night sky, take a moment to look around you. You never know who or what might be watching back. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.